All right, hi everybody. Nice to see you. Sorry we started a couple minutes late, but that's okay. We wanted to build up the anticipation. So I'm Warren Flax, and we are Silver Brush Limited. Thanks for joining us. I've got a lot of screens up here. Let's just move some folks around. So here is my mom, Dee Silver, the founder of Silver Brush Limited. We're going to talk to you today about Silver Silk 88. And I have some other special guests to introduce to you. First of all, while we're talking about the Silver Brush family, why not? This is my daughter, Julia Flax. So you now have 3 generations of Silver Brush. Julia is working here this summer, here at our Clearwater, Florida warehouse. So let's get right to it. Well, let me just quickly show you. So this gentleman is Micah Goguen. He is a highly talented Silver Brush educator in Macon, Georgia, and he is going to do a wonderful demo for us here in a few minutes, specifically with the Silver Silk 88. Mike has been with us for a few years now, and one of the most popular teachers, I think, in the state of Georgia. Right? His classes are always full, so we'll see. Yeah, he's being humble. He's being humble, but we know those classes sell out. So we'll give folks a chance to win some of these brushes. Micah put together a specific set just for you all. So that'll be coming up in a few minutes. As you know, we love it when you chime in. Let us know where you are tuning in from. And we're going to give away, as I rotate around here, we're going to give away a couple of these sets to some of you. So let us know who you are, where you're here from, and we'll pick some winners in about 30 to 40 minutes. So first of all, let's talk about this, Mom. Silver Silk 88. These are long handle. So what are they for? Who are they for? And why did we bring these brushes to market? There's certainly plenty of brushes out there.
Okay, well, that's a lot of questions. I hope to answer them. Welcome, everybody from Oregon and Wisconsin and Alberta. Yeah, I think my granddaughter's kind of cute too. I think so too. Um, my name's Dee Silver. Silver Brush has been in business over 33 years. We're pretty proud of that and excited as well. And so let's talk about Silver Silk for a minute. It took me several years to come up with the recipe for Silver Silk because it's a very different kind of filament. It is a synthetic filament, but I wanted to be able to give the artist something that's extraordinary in quality, but also a value price. So if you take a look at these brushes, for what you're getting really great value. You really are. This is 100% synthetic fiber, but it's a different kind of fiber. It has little scratches all over each one of the filaments, so that it's color. So when you typically look at extruded plastic, it looks like this. I'll just make a fancy picture for you. It looks, let's see, can you see that? It looks just like extruded plastic. That's all it is. But what we've done is we've been able to give it gradation all around the edges. And this is a tremendous difference because what happens with this, there you go, Warren's got it right there, perfect. Uh, so you notice that you've got two things here. First, you've got the top, that's a typical brush, not ours, but a typical brush. Notice all those circles are exactly the same size. The next one down, Warren, move it up. Notice all the different sizes of the filament. That's very important because that's what keeps the material or the color on the filament itself. It stops it from flowing off. And the bottom one, you can see all the gradations all around it. Now that took me a couple of years to get the factory to do it correctly, and that really makes the color stay on the filament. So you don't have this puddling when you push the brush down. And that makes this a very unique brush. So you have affordable luxury. That's what I call it because there is nothing really quite like this in terms of the quality of the hair. So I'm looking forward to listening to Micah, but we make these in many different shapes, dagger and rounds and flats and brights and filberts and extra long filberts. Notice how long this filbert is. This is the difference between the long and the extra long. You see the difference? Very long. And that's great if you're painting something right into the surface of the painting. These are very long lasting, very durable, and priced beautifully. And I'm very proud of them. They're great purple if you're a purple person like I am. And they're available at retailers really throughout the world. I'm excited that Mike is doing the chat today about it and the demo, because this is a brush line that really needs a lot of attention. It's just such a wonderful series. So we put together with Micah's help this great set, which I understand Warren's going to be raffling off a few of them, and there's also going to be a hashtag at the end, so you will be able to get it on Amazon as well. For a very affordable, really good price, and it's an exciting set. It really is. And it gives you an open door to some of the great brushes that we have at a very affordable pricing. We're not just all about black velvet. We've got about 33 different series in our company. So, and I'm always coming out with something new, of course. And I'm very excited to talk about this one. By the way, just one more mention. It also comes in short handle. Short handle is a very, very big seller for us. And there are 15 different shapes in the short handle silver silk. So we've got 8 or 9 in the long handle and about 15 in the short. So this is
16.
Extraordinary. 16. Lauren just corrected me. Thank you. So I think this is something that you really need to put into your artist toolbox and you give it a try. It's great for acrylics. It's great for fluid acrylics. It's great for watercolors, any kind of watercolors. Any kind of acrylics, jar acrylics, even heavy bodied. You can use it for oils, but make sure, as all synthetic fiber brushes, you must clean up synthetic fibers with an odorless solvent from an art supply store. And please enjoy the demonstration. Thank you for coming today, by the way. Appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. So without further ado, let's get to our demonstration. So Micah, let me make you full screen here. Where did you go on my screen? There you are, sir. Great. Put you up.
Hey everybody, I'm making sure that this is right side up because I thought it was, and I don't think it is now. How about that? Yep, there we go. All right, so it'll just be backwards for me. How's everybody doing? So you can hear me okay, right?
Yes, sir. You sound good.
Okay, this little private chat thing keeps popping up and blocking, but I'm going to talk to you today about the long handle Silver Silk 88 series. And if you're not familiar, my name is Micah Goguen. I'm in Middle Georgia, teaching around the Southeast area, but also I've hit the West Coast a little bit. And the biggest thing that I've got from guests is just how do I get started? You know, they look at the silver brush line and they're like, how do I get started? What do I get started with? And so keep in mind that everybody's journey is individual. I mean, I could sit here and little what I do and what the people I work with do, and you may have something special that works for you. So just take what you want and leave the rest. We're going to talk about the Silver Silk 88 long handle. Typically, as a rule of thumb, I use long handle when I'm working away from an artwork, and I use short handle when I'm working tabletop with no easel. That's just a rule of thumb. If I'm doing some minute detail on a larger piece, I might go in with a short handle and finite. But I think what I've found in the selections of shapes and sizes, that kind of reinforces that behavior, at least in my practice. The set that we're going to be excited to talk to you about a little bit later on was kind of curated based on the thought of what starts with a beginner. So typically when somebody's beginning their painting, watercolor, mixed media journey, they're typically, from what I've noticed, working on works that are like 12 by 16, 12 by 12 and smaller. And so with that in mind, I've noticed over time, even when the students had more of a selection, do you think we could mute the other microphones? Because I'm getting some background that's clicking. So even with the other works, what was happening is that even if they had larger brushes, they weren't really using them with the smaller canvases. So for example, we used to include a number 10 in our standard set. It was a number 10 filbert. And after 5 years of working with students on a weekly basis, guess which brush they hardly ever used was that number 10 filbert. Now again, know the rules, break the rules. Just because you have a number 10 filbert You'll have some painters that are telling you when you want to loosen up. It's a great exercise to use a number 10 or some large brush and paint the whole painting with the large brush. And yes, that's true in that season. But I'm mostly dealing with beginners that are entry level that are looking for some direction and guidelines. The thing that makes Silver Silk 88 long handle and short handle so special is they're made with the highest quality synthetic filament on the market. So it's got a great wear resistance. It's got wonderful absorbency. It's got great color loading, and it really is versatile. So Dee talked a little bit about the filament diameters, but also the way that they're kind of conjoined together. So just from a practical application standpoint, what I noticed is I work with a lot of gels, paste, and aggregates because I mostly work with mixed media art. And I found that the springiness and the stiffness of the Silver Silk hold those paste and aggregates way better than anything else. And they are easier to clean up. So the more silky filaments, like, for example, Silver Silk, what else do we have? The Golden Natural, the Monzas. They're excellent for a lot of different things. They do not play well with gels and paste for mica. They're always more difficult for me to clean. And I think it has a lot to do with that diagram that Dee just showed you, because my explanation of it when I'm cleaning it is that the softer and more fine the filament are together, the harder it is for the sediment to come out of the brush. So for example, that's why watercolor brushes tend to be a softer, silkier filament, because there's not as much residue. It's just pigment and gum arabic that's actually going into the brush. But if you've ever used a watercolor brush to varnish, or if you've ever used a Monza, for example, too long with your fluid acrylic, you'll see that they get kind of caked up in there if you don't clean them really well. Now, they are very versatile for different things. It's just knowing a tool for the job. With Silver Silk, I feel like they are the most wear resistant. So when I'm going across a variety of surfaces, which I'm about to demo for you, and as a matter of fact, I'm sure you'd rather see the demo than my face. So why don't we enlarge this demo board, and I'll just go ahead and show you. Whenever we're working with a variety of media, so we have several different viscosities of media, first of all, and I'm going to put some down, and I'm not going to hold space with that because we're talking about the brushes more than the paint, but I do want to make you aware that there are heavier viscosities of paint. So for me, I don't know if I could, I'm not going to worry about it. But for heavy body acrylic is what I'm going to use first, and you can't see it because I put it here to the side and it's disappeared. I don't know if we can enlarge the screen, maybe we can't, but just pretend like you saw me doing it. And here's the heavy body acrylic, and I'm going to spread it on the board so that you can see the loading capacity. So what I'm working with is a lot more substance, and it's carrying a lot of that paint, just real heavy chunkiness, right? Now we also have a fluid acrylic, and since I can't see my palette, I'm going to put it right here on the paper so that you can see it. So that's a fluid viscosity paint. Oh, and it's backwards too. Okay, great. So I'm going to run this in there and spread this around. And that way you can kind of see the flow of the brush fibers as the paint's mixing together. So the loading capacity shows you that. Another big thing is that the heavier the viscosity gets, so for example, if you're using a heavy gel or a thicker gel, if you're using a soft bristle brush, and I'm not going to pick on my friend this silver white, but I'm just grabbing this long silver white, for example. And if I go to put a soft bristle brush, backwards is forwards here, and I go to grab this up, it's grabbing it, but because the filament is so soft, it's collapsing under the weight of the heavy viscosity material, and it's not going to spread or slather it quite as well. Now, I'm not saying every silver brush does every job, but I am going to say that Silver Silk 88, I can just scoop this right out, and I can spread and manipulate it much more easily because of the stiffness of the brushes. And then also it's much easier to clean, A, because of the synthetic properties, but B, because of the way that the filaments are dispersed, the way that Dee described in the beginning. So I can really move a lot of texture and heavy manipulation with the brush when I'm doing that. So that's something to consider. Now, another byproduct is it's also really great for watercolor. it's not the primary brush that it's an excellent brush for watercolor. It's not the initial brush that I suggest for a newcomer, but if a guest were looking at the silver brush line and trying to say, when and why would I buy silver silk? I can only speak from my own personal experience and for those that I talk to. But I think if you work in a variety of media and you don't want to buy several lines of brushes, like if you do a little watercolor, a little acrylic, a little bit of mixed media, then the silver silk for sure is like the number one choice to go through and expand because it's the most versatile. And if you're flipping media and you're flipping projects, it can handle beautifully all the media. Now, if I'm specifically going into watercolor, for example, or fluid acrylics or whatever the case may be, high flows, I'm still not going to say it's not a superior brush for that because that wouldn't be an accurate truth. But there may be other things that I may find a lot more fully encompassing within that media. So I'm going to show you the absorbency capacity, and this is cold press ground material. So it's just like a very heavyweight cold press ground watercolor paper. And what I'm going to do first is I'm not even going to take any material. I'm just going to take some water, and right now it's dirty water from where I just cleaned this brush, and I'm just going to put some holding capacity. And the fact that it is slightly dirty is great because you can actually kind of somewhat see it on this panel. Now, I can wet and moisten a surface pretty easily just with a couple of strokes of the silver Silk 88. And now I'm going to take a little color, and I'm just going to deposit one drop or two on the panel. And then I want you to watch the smoothness of how it's able to flow through. And just for fun, we're going to add an alternate color so that you can really see it. And we're going to let it bleed through. And you can see the precision that I get, even in watercolor. It's got a real firm, watch the filaments on there move. You see how they're very responsive. They're not quite the same as a softer filament. So it really helps with a lot of water media. So if I was doing an intense watercolor here, I could do it on that surface, but I'm going to show you another example. So this is a mixed media piece, but it's been treated with a toothy surface, pastel ground to be exact. And what I'm going to choose to do is I'm going to put a little bit of this high flow material on the side. And I'm going to do the same thing to show how you can do this on a glazed water surface. So this is just water. And again, this pastel ground, it would be similar to a pastel board, an aqua board, you know, a watercolor canvas, anything that needs a little bit of saturation in order to receive the material. And then what I'm going to do is take some of this high flow and I'm just going to dap it in. And you can just see or not see that it's dancing across and spreading over the surface. And I'm going to put a little contrast color there because we love doing that. And then I can disperse it. And you can just see all the flow that's going on with that. And because, again, of the wear resistance, you're not going to really grate or ruin. I mean, I've had this number 6 flat, for example, for quite some time. And you can see, like, no joke, it's dirty. Let me show you a clean one. This is a brand new clean one from the set. So here's the difference. Okay, backwards. Left is right, right is left. Okay, there's a clean one and there's a dirty one. And you can see that they're both still in really excellent shape. They're both very crisp, very clean. And so that tells you the wear resistance that you're getting. I think this brush is about 2.5, 3 years old. And so there's no splurging, there's no brittle. I don't know, like if you ever had to deal with hair and you know that hair get like split ends. Well, usually when I'm working on a mixed media surface with some of the other, just any other kind of brush, not silver brush, but just brushes, and I'm working on an agitated surface, a lot of times it can fray and split the edges pretty easily. So that's why I like when I'm working on like gridded material. It could be things like coarse molding paste, it could be metallic aggregates, it could be any kind of things. It will really just chew up and tear down the edge of my brush. And with this, it just takes a beating and keeps on going. So that's been really, you know, popular and important for me. Now, I want to be more specific, and I've got other things that kind of hairy-carry out of order here, but that's fine with me if it's fine with you. And what I want to show you is why and how we pick these 4 brushes in this set and what they are specifically used for. So what I already explained to you is that, again, know the rules, break the rules, but in a general sense, people looking for direction, you really don't need anything larger than a number 8 brush when you're working on, in my opinion, 12 by 16 and smaller. Usually people don't move up to anything bigger than an 8 until they start working. Now that's all from the beginner's mind frame, so keep that in mind. So what I like to use with this 4 set, the set comes with a number 6 flat, a number 6 filbert, a number 4 bright, and a number 2 bright. Now you'll notice there's no rounds in here, and if you know me and you know my teaching style, it's like I don't know why, but rounds don't. Well, I do know why. Rounds don't really work as well for me. So knowing yourself, knowing your practice also is going to augment the types of tools that you use and why you use them. So for example, you could ask 8 different teachers and they're going to tell you 8 different answers as far as what they like, what they use. And the joke that I always say is, you know, you can ask 10 people for directions to Walmart and they might all tell you different ways, but you're going to get to Walmart. So I don't know if y'all like Walmart or not. But, what I'd use the small bright for is that I don't really use rounds for drawing and for detail because I tend to press hard. Like when I do handwriting, I bear down very hard. So for me, the round is detrimental because when I go to put pressure on it, I tend to press down too hard. And so this is another line, but if I go to work with the round brush and I bear down too hard, it gets too thick of a depression and it's not a clean line for me. And because I know I'm heavy-handed, and if you want to know the art therapy behind that, but I do bear down too hard. And if I do that, I'm not going to get a clean line. So what I do is I like to use the number 2 bright, and I like to draw my paintings out with it. So let's just pretend we're just going to do a happy little landscape. And I'm going to use my number 2 bright, and I'm going to put a horizon line in here very quickly. And I'm going to put my little windy road that we like to have in there very quickly. And this is how I'll start out my drawings. So I'm going to draw my composition in here. Let's do some clouds. And we'll do like a little mini cloud up here. That looks like fun. And then we'll do another one over here. Yay. Okay, so I'm drawing with my number 2 bright. And that's one of my favorite things to do rather than use the round. Now, outside of that, as a general rule, I don't know the professional language, I just kind of made it up. But what I tell the students at home is we have our deposit brushes and we have our tickle brushes. And so I consider the brights to be more for drawing, scraping, glazing, scumbling, dry brushing. But the longer filaments, such as the flats and the filberts, which I think somebody originally had a question in the comments about, were these all long flats? No, they're not. But the long bristle brushes like flats and filberts, I call them deposit brushes. Why do I do that? Well, because if I go into, let's just say, for example, this is a bright, and I have pulled up some heavy body acrylic with it. And I've got a substantial amount, right? So if I go to deposit this on the canvas, the brush doesn't have as much flexibility. Now it's wadding it on there, no lie, right? It's scooped it up and it's dropping it down and it's moving it through. But as I start to diminish out the paint, you can see the bristles are not flexing quite as easily because they're shorter, so there's less give. So they tend to scrape, my finger there, they tend to scrape the paint off rather than slather it. I have to put more pressure in order to get that nice smooth depression. And the nice smooth depression is what helps fill in what I call the pixels. It's really, the formal name is the weft of the canvas, and that's where it interlocks and it creates those little pockets. And if I don't have the slather to depress down into the pixel, then I end up with spotty coverage like that. So the brush has to be really heavily loaded and I have to get a full depression in there. And I'm going to let y'all hit these other questions that are coming through. But as far as what I'm talking about, that's what I use, the deposits, and I use the blenders for the top. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the flat and I'm going to deposit some paint on either side. And I'm just grabbing color here. I'm not really trying to make it landscape specific. But you see the coverage and the hold that I'm able to get pretty quickly from the material. It really moves around the surface. And if I want the color strokes to show up with the variety, I can just leave them in there with permanence, and it's no problemo. I can also switch to a fluid media and guide it through, and the strokes are going to show up really nice. Sorry, I have to keep looking up because the screen is inverted. And then I can go back and forth with that material. So those are deposit brushes. Now the problem with a flat brush is it's not even a problem, but the thing that it creates is these nice hard fine line and edges that I can get these nice crisp sides if I want. Sometimes I don't want that because I might be painting a cloud or I might be painting some landscape. So that's where the filbert comes in. Now these are the same size, because a lot of people ask this question, is they're on the brush, and it actually refers to the circumference of the brush handle. So these are both number 6s. Everything is completely uniform in the brushes until you get to the brush style. And that's where the end of this is rounded, kind of like a thumbnail. So it's called a filbert, and this one is a flat. A lot of people confuse the flats with the bright because they both do have flat edges, but one has longer bristles than the other. So that's the main differentiation in this set. Now, if I'm doing a cloud, for example, and I'm just going to do a green cloud because of time conservation here, and I'm going to go backwards that way. Is that right? Gosh, this is confusing. I'm going to put this down with the flat brush, and it's going to give me a little bit harder edges. So that's not necessarily what I expect or want in a cloud. Well, I can take this filbert, for example, whenever I want a softer edge, and I'm going to blend in a little bit more of a lighter color here. And I'm going to feather these edges to get that soft, billowy cloud effect. And I can move it this way. Boop, 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 boop. It's also really great for flower petals. So it's much more of a rounded edge. Now it's also really great for fur, feathers, etc., because I can soften the edges. So if I were doing soft gradient in bird feathers, for example, I could just move that across and get a little bit of a softer transition. It's just a little bit more effective, in my opinion, than the flat brush when you're softening that. And then I'm going to talk about the brights here, other than just drawing with them. And I'm going to switch gears as far as the painting goes, because this was just to show you the layout. So once I have an actual painting started, and this is a backwards cat that I just stuck in my paint palette. So if I'm going to glaze on top of this cat, for example, I'm going to take a little bit of high flow and put it here off screen. You can't see it. And I'm going to grab just a little bit with this bright, and I'm going to deposit a little bit of color. Now, and the language might get confusing because you're like, hey, didn't he just say earlier deposit? He's going to deposit with these long bristle brushes. Well, deposit is an action, and it's also a description. So right now I'm just doing the action and depositing the paint. I clean the brush out, and I take the number 4 bright, and what I'm going to do is just tickle or soften the edge. And what that's going to do is create a soft blended gradient. And especially when I combine the colors, I'm going to add a little bit of Nicolazo gold to this mixture, and I'm going to deposit it nearby. And I'm going to run that through. And you see, I can soften and move over. Now, because the bristles are shorter, what it's actually doing is it's assisting me with laying a transparent layer. So it's helping me to not put too much paint down. Now, the combination is I'm also using a high flow, which is a higher viscosity paint. But the combination of the two is allowing me to see through to the original underpainting, which was the value that I did. And that's one of the attributes of the brights, is that I have both a number 2 and a number 4, so that when I'm working on paintings, this is an 11 by 14, that I can get into these tight spaces and I can create a little bit more detail and activity and move the paint around with more precision and control. So that really helps out a lot as far as the brights go. Now, I want to show you another trick with brights. If I'm working on something like this that has a lot of sharp edges, a lot of patterning, it can also help me get a lot of precision and control in these tight spaces. So what I'm going to do is load up the bright, and I'm just going to activate this spot just by putting smooth swaths. And so it's very easily glazing across the surface. And again, because it is a bright and not a flat, you can see back is front, front is back. So there is the pixelation that I discussed. You can kind of see the weft of the canvas, see all the little micro dots, and then notice that you don't see them next to it where it was a heavier paint and put on with a flat. So I can glaze these tight areas, but I can also move along and get these crisp surfaces with straight lines are abundant. Sometimes I want them, sometimes I don't, but I can fill that in really effectively and efficiently with that. If I want to move in for a smaller sector, like some of these micro sections, or especially if it's a straight line, I always personally choose to draw my straight lines with the flat end of a number 2 bright. So here I go, whee, and that's my straight line. Whenever I'm doing tree limbs or anything like that, that's a common thing that people like to enjoy doing or struggle doing is the trees. So let's just pretend we're doing some tree limbs here. If I go up, over, because I'm over accentuating these, what I call elbows. There's always like elbows in trees, right? So essentially I got some pretty straight lines. Now, if I hold it sideways, I'm going to get a more broad line. And that's the problem that I had when I was using the round because of my heavy-handed self. But if I hold it straight up, I'll get a really straight, crisp, saturated line. And I can, a lot of times, effectively navigate and work with that. When I'm working with something like tree branches, I know that the elbows get a little bit more rounded, but they're certainly not curved, and they get thicker as they come down. So I know that I can move the material, angling the brush, and normally, no, I would not choke up because my students, if any of them are watching, are probably saying, back off that brush handle, because long handle means you get away from it, but small camera space and also makes us get closer to it. Now, if I happen to go wider on a tree branch, because remember, they're supposed to get thinner as they go up, this is another favorite thing to do with the brights, is that I could actually subtract to diminish. So if I take the bright and I just move it along the edge, I can actually minimize my line. I'm going to flip it so I can work it on the other side. And I can take the edge of the bright. I'm hoping that's within camera range. Back is front, front is back. There we go. And then I can move it side to side and minimize that brush stroke. And then if I want a negative paint, I can just take another material and move it right along and keep my brush stroke really clean. And now I have a little skinny tree branch again. So brights are perfect for that. That's why there's 2 of them in this set. Back to the filbert and back to the landscape. Landscape-ish. It's a landscape of brush techniques. Don't you love it? So what I'm going to do is also take this filbert, and a lot of times when they're putting little distant plant life, people like doing that. That's another thing that I like the filbert for, because instead of giving me straight lines, I can just put spaces and material on here so that I can create some rounded value, and all of a sudden I have this whole horizon line for landscapes with the filbert. Okay, and that's just the first round application, because I can come back afterwards when I go to block in the sky, and then I can put the sky next to it, and then I'd come back and use my brights to tickle that. And we're going to come back to that. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but that's a little way of using the filbert there. Let's see. Here's another example for mixed media. These are some canoes that I was working on. And I've already done the block in. It's a water media, and I'm using high flow material with it. And once I have the block end done, so when I'm talking about block end, typically it's a generic definition that means that I'm covering all the white of the canvas. And when I've made progress on a painting, I've usually gotten all the block end done. So for example, if I'm looking at students' work and I'm looking at this, then I'm going to look at the spaces that are no longer filled in. So for example, I've blocked in the rest of the boat, but I still have to block in the perimeter and the edge of the boat. So when I block in, that's typically when I'm using these long bristle brushes and just depositing a general temperature or coat of paint down. So what I'm going to do is, do you need to ask me a question? Go ahead. Okay, so go ahead. Yep, I'm here. I'm here for it.
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're moving along. We're just getting close to picking some winners here. So.
Okay. Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
That's
All
right.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this block in, and then when you are ready to say a winner, then I'm all for it. I'm going to back off and not do my thing. So I'm blocking in the edge of this boat, and then once I have the block in, let me just skip back to these brights. You ready? You need me?
Oh, you're good.
Okay. Sorry. Back
couple minutes to wrap it up.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Hey, you guys can get way more of this anytime you want. Just email me and I'm happy to go through it anytime you want. So here is the bright, and I'm going to go ahead and glaze that on top of here, and you can see the transparency beneath, that I can see beneath the color. But again, because of the strategy I told you earlier, it's putting a thinner layer. A lot of times when I'm seeing students block in with a bright, I'm like, man, you need to switch to a flat or a filbert, or you're going to have to do that 3 or 4 times. So it's just a little bit of attention there. And I want to show you one more thing, and then I will stop demoing. Oh, I lied. 2 more things. So here's something you probably never thought about for the Silver Silk 88s. Because of the durability, they are really good with pastel. Now, a lot of people do not use them for, or maybe, I don't know what a lot of people do, but I think people probably have not thought about using Silver Silk for pastel board. But when a lot of pastel artists are putting down underpaintings, this is kind of an underpainting of a waterfall that was created, and it's on a board made out of marble dust. There's also aggregates that are made out of marble dust that people use, and when people fixate their alcohol washes of the pastel, a lot of times the marble dust surface can just totally tear up the brushes. But I've been using mine on this pastel board for years, and they're still in great shape. So you can actually fix a lot of the pastel down, and this is really new since a lot of people are using pen pastel and other things now. And finally, we have like a textured piece here, and I'm going to just show you how to run over texture. So this is like glass bead gel, some embossed wallpaper, some molding paste, and I'm just going to take a little bit of color, and I'm going to just use this almost like a spatula and just run it across the surface. And you see that it just kind of picks up certain aspects of the texture. It gives it the highlights. I'm going to do the same thing on the embossed wallpaper. I have to put my finger here so I know which way I'm going. You see how beautiful that is? How it just pops out all that detail that you didn't even know existed. And again, because the filaments are nice and responsive, they just glide across the texture and just pull those highlights out. So I think they want to announce a winner. I'm hearing some stuff, so I'm gonna slow down so they can do their thing.
Okay, this is great, Micah. I think folks could go on for quite some time. So sorry to wrap everybody up. But there was a question towards the end about bright versus flat. That's a very, very common brush question. The flat is longer, length out in the head, and it holds more paint. The bright is shorter, and it's more controlling for you. So it's a common question we get all the time.
I'm like, Marsha, did I not just answer that question?
Yeah, they're typing it in, so what can I tell you?
I'm kidding.
So this is great. Micah, I want to thank you. Well, let's do 2 things. Okay, so before we do the giveaway, I actually want to show you all something. So let's see, how am I going to do this? I'm going to share my screen Let me just open it up. We're going to do that. Yeah. So let's share that screen. The one that has, let's see, window. There it is. Okay, great. All right. So you all can see this. So if you go to silverbrush.com, okay, and this window pops up, you can type in your name and your email address. We're going to be moving these lives over to Zoom, away from the platforms of Instagram and Facebook. Technologically, it's a little bit easier. I think we're going to be able to give you guys a little more content and get more demos and things like this. So Micah was real patient today with the technology that we're using and did a great job. But I want you all to get the emails when we start inviting you to these Zooms, because you're on these now. So just make sure we have your email address. Go to silverbrush.com and make sure your name and your email address are in here so that you can subscribe. That's what we'll be using going forward. So I'm going to end that. So thank you for that. Now, of course, let's give away some free stuff, which of course we'll continue doing when we do the Zooms, by the way, everybody. So this beautiful set that Micah helped us put together, again, it is available on Amazon. It is SK Silver Silk SK8004. If you type that in on the Amazon browser, you will find it. The link is currently broken, so I'm not going to give it to you, but this is the product. We'll get that squared away by, within the next hour. But for now, we're going to give away a couple of these free ones. And the first winner is actually in Micah's backyard in Warner Robins, Georgia, Kara Hurd. I believe she was on Facebook. Congratulations, Kara. Micah is excited about the Georgia winner. These Bulldogs stick together. And then the other winner from Instagram, I don't know how to pronounce it, Mauj Art, Mauj Art. So congratulations to you. Send us a direct message through the platform with your mailing addresses, everybody, and we will get you your prizes. Let me get some more faces on here. I shouldn't be the only one. Let me get down. There we go. There's Micah clapping for the winners. There's Dee. There she is. Nice to see everybody. So that's going to do it for us this week. Everyone go to silverbrush.com so that we have your email address. We want to start Zooming with you so that we can connect a little bit better going forward. And look forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks, everybody. That'll conclude